Okay, good day, class. Today we are going to be doing the lecture for managing collections and managing technologies. I'm going to combine these, and after this, I should only have one more lecture for this module, which will be the assessment lecture. So, right now, we're looking at information to kind of supplement what's going to be in chapter 25 and 26 in your book. 25 is managing collections and 26 is managing technologies. So what I want to say for the aspect of managing collections is that the main thing I want to say is that we do need to kind of get out of the box, or we are getting out of the box when it comes to managing collections. And one thing that I think is going to grow increasingly more popular, and one thing that you may want to experiment with when you all become managers, is to see what kind of consortia and collaborative borrowing agreements you're able to establish with other institutions. For those of you who are here in South Carolina, which is not everybody, but I believe it's the majority of you, you probably are aware of Pascal, which is the borrowing consortium among the universities, colleges, and community colleges here in the state of South Carolina. And in North Carolina, where I'm originally from, we have several consortia wherever you go. You have NC Lab, where public and academic libraries within the state are borrowing from one another. And in addition to that, if you go to a school in the 16 campus UNC system, you can borrow books from any library and any other institutional library within the system. So say you go to UNC Chapel Hill in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, you can actually borrow books over at Appalachian State, which is another UNC system school on the other side of the state. And then there's also where I used to live in what they call the Triad area, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point, North Carolina. There are several colleges and universities, as well as I believe a public library system, that are part of what they call TALA, which is the Triad Area Library Association, and they have collaborative borrowing agreements. ILL will also be a bigger thing, I think, as we move forward with institutions through interstate borrowing. I think is going to become a bigger thing as we continue, and that's going to be another way as we look at limited library space and limited shelving space and that sort of thing. And we're also going to be sacrificing some of our shelving space for other things such as technology, such as meeting rooms and libraries. Those are going to be trends that are going to continue. So as we continue doing those sorts of things, one way that we will account for that is to have even interstate borrowing, and maybe there's going to be some things that your particular library will never have on the shelves, but they always know that they can borrow those things from other institutions. Also, when we talk about managing collections, we are going to have to talk about remote access. Remote access is probably one of this is my personal opinion, I can't back this up with data, I apologize, but I believe that in my personal opinion, I think that remote access is going to be something that will continue to be looked at, and we will attempt to find solutions for making remote access the way that we deliver a lot of our content, both database content and even in the form of ebooks and things like that. I think we're going to, as a field, we're going to look more and more heavily into that right now. And I've taken this issue up personally with the one of the incoming ALA presidents, Jim Neal. I can't remember when his term is going to start, but that was one thing that I asked him on social media. I asked him, what is ALA going to do? Because we have all these capabilities for remote access, but they continue to be underutilized. And I think that we need to face facts in this world of Netflix and HBO Go and Hulu and all that stuff. People are, they're wanting to access things at home, the internet in itself, and accessing information at home. We know very clearly that people are no longer, way back in the day when I was growing up, we actually had these things called Blockbuster Video. We used to actually go to a store to rent a video, and people don't do that sort of thing now. So I think libraries are going to need to follow in that trend the same way. Library as a place definitely still has its value, and I think it's the value of library as physical space is actually kind of underscored. I think it's more popular than some people, including some professionals in the field, realize. But at the same time, remote access, I think, is going to be something that will grow as we continue to grow as a field. So, I want you guys to be thinking about remote access and how you can sell remote access to your patrons as you become professionals and managers, because that's one of the many things, one of the many solutions, one of the many problems that we're going to need solutions for going forward. I did want to, when talking about managing collections, I do think that there's also going to be a lot more of the, statewide and even national and international digital libraries and digital collections, and these are things that are going to be important. If you are managing a library, public or academic, probably even school, there's probably going to be some room for you to digitize collections, and it's going to be very important that your library does so. And I would say we have a very strong digital collections initiative going here at the University of South Carolina, and hopefully it'll continue to grow, but I think it's definitely off to a good start, and I think we've got very visionary people running it. But I don't want that to be an academic library thing. Public libraries are capable of digitizing collections, and maybe that's going to take some grant work, and maybe that's going to require hiring project managers, people who are temporary employees who just work on a digital initiative for a small public library, and then they go on to their next thing. But there's room for this type of thing to be happening within the public libraries as well. And so I'm hoping that, again, I spit these ideas out to students because I think that students can take it and run with it. I think that for those of you who are going to be going into public libraries, one thing that you can look at once you become a professional librarian is trying to see what interest there is at your public library and what interest there is within your community as far as starting or improving the digital initiative, digitizing the local history and local content and local culture of your public library. That's cultural heritage informatics right there. Okay. And so I'm going to include this link below. Okay, below. I'm going to have this link below. I'm actually going to have two links for you below related to the collections piece. The first one is going to be the link to the World Digital Library. If you have not seen this already, please look at it. Just take a few moments to look at it. And then I'm also going to include a link from Cornell University's library regarding climate controls, because these are things that you're going to have to think about when managing collections. And I'm a little surprised that this chapter in our textbook doesn't really mention the climate controls very well, but you're going to have to look at, and I mentioned this in the facilities lecture too, you're going to have to look at relative humidity, lighting, and air quality when you are trying to manage and maintain and keep healthy collections in the library. And so that link that I'm going to provide from Cornell University Library, that's going to assist with that. Okay, let's talk about managing IT or managing technology. So in today's libraries, information technology, as you guys know, is a large part of the operations, the day-to-day operations within a library, academic, public, or school today. And there are so many types of things that are being done via computers. It is very important to give the assailants their due diligence. I've just got a list here that I'm going to go through as far as things that are computer-based technologies that are very essential to today's library in 2016. They would include Ask a Librarian services. We have chat, email, and instant messaging services for Ask a Librarian. Many public and academic libraries have this. Commercial databases, as you guys already know, those are going to be huge parts of your graduate education. And if you are working at the academic library in particular, a lot of those heavy-duty databases are going to be things that you're going to need to familiarize yourself with while you're on the job. But I would not underestimate that at public libraries. I have both public and academic librarian experience, and I definitely used JSTOR at the public library. I definitely used Academic Search Premier at the public library. And then there are a lot of neat databases at the public library that I didn't really get to use much at the academic library. Things like Mango, which is a language database. Those sorts of things are, you get to be a lot more fun and creative, I think, with some of your public library databases, but you got to get to know them all. And especially if you're a manager, you are going to need to be familiar with them. You're going to need to advise your staff to get familiar with them, and it's going to be difficult for your staff to get familiar with them if they don't know what they are, and then you don't know what they are to tell them what they are. And you're going to want to keep track of which databases are being the most heavily used, because those are probably the ones that your staff are going to want to keep their competencies up with. However, having said that, just because a database is rarely used doesn't mean you neglect it, because you don't want to be that person who gets caught not knowing how to use a database that is not commonly used when a patron actually has a question with that particular one. I've been there many times. It's not a comfortable feeling. Some other technology-based things that we are working with in today's library, we've got digital library branches. We've got digital reference works, educational software, Mango, as I mentioned, the language database. Some people would consider that an educational software. Email, if you're in the public library especially, you're probably going to have to be helping people out with email a lot. Games, government information, a lot of that is digital only now, and so you are going to have patrons, especially in the public library, who are looking for federal, state, local government documents, who are trying to look for law and things like that. Homework resources, those are always nice. Interlibrary loan software, please familiarize yourself with that. You're probably going to, it seems like a lot of libraries typically have one or two people who are most familiar with interlibrary loan and are really the ones who are handling that. But if you're in management, you also need to have competency in that area. The OPACs, same sort of deal. You probably have somebody within the library who's designated to take care of the OPAC, but you as the manager need to be able to keep a good competency and handle on that, and to at least troubleshoot basic concerns, especially if your person who's the designated person keeping up with the OPAC is not available at any given time. Social networks and also social media. You want to make sure that your library has some sort of social media presence. A Facebook page is very good. Twitter accounts tend to be very good. Keep up with social media, because those things change. Even though Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is shown to have pretty good staying power, there are some other things that come and go. So you want to make sure you stay on top of what's going on in that realm. Software for word processing and spreadsheets. You want to update your software whenever you can. Hardware is going to be generally updated every 4 to 5 years. So that's when you're replacing computers and CPUs and that sort of thing. That tends to be the average. The research backs that up. But software, you just, whenever you can update it, you do so. And then technology training. You're going to actually have technology training softwares for one thing, hopefully, but also you're going to want to set aside sometimes for your library staff to get technological training. You want to make sure that they are competent and able to assist patrons. Okay. As I just mentioned, and this is the case for both public and academic libraries. Again, I'm not sure about school libraries, I apologize. But public and academic libraries, they tend to replace their hardware for public access on a 4 to 5 year cycle. Staff computers may be updated more frequently. And again, this is for hardware, this is for actual units. But as far as software, you probably don't want to, if you can avoid it, you probably don't want to wait 4 or 5 years to, for instance, upgrade your Microsoft Word and that sort of thing. It's 2015, so, I mean, it's 2016, so you probably don't want to be some library that is still operating on what they were using 5 years ago, which would have been, I guess, Office 2010. So, you know, hopefully you're up on the 2013, or you will be soon, or a newer version if need be, and if it's available and you are able. I wanted to share a quote. This is from Leslie Berger, who is a former president of ALA. And Leslie Berger said, "Once we started offering public computing, that brought people back to libraries and attracted a lot of groups that wouldn't have fit our quote-unquote library profile in the past." People talk a lot about who's not visiting the library now because of technology. But one thing that people don't talk about is who is visiting the library now because of technology. There are some people who are visiting the library now because of technology that were not visiting the library back in the day. So you want to think about that. The types of technologies that you offer are going to affect who's coming into the library. A great example of that would actually be fax services. Some public libraries offer faxing, some do not. And if you do offer free local faxing through your public library and people are spared the expense of going to somewhere like FedEx Kinko's to do their pay-for fax service, then that's going to affect who's coming into the library. And it's the same thing with a lot of other resources that are technology based. If you have a scanner that allows people to scan documents and save it to their flash drive, or they can email it or put it in their cloud or whatever, you know, that's going to affect who's coming in. So if you're trying to reach out to various segments of your community, then the technology that you offer that can greatly affect the customers who are coming in, and it can draw a new customer base. And one sort of out of the box thought that I have seen being done is that forgive me, I can't remember which library is doing this again. I think it's a library based in Michigan, but there's a library that actually loans tools. They have tool sets that people can check out from the library, and these include, I think, power tools and then just basic tools. And these are for people who are, you know, novices as far as home repair and that sort of thing. If you know what you're doing with home repair, then you probably got your own tool set. This is for people who are just kind of dabbling in it and making quick fixes here and there. And there's nothing written in the library handbook that says you can only loan out things that are for knowledge and for lifelong education and that sort of thing. If you're loaning out a tool set, then that's again going to affect your patron base and probably draw in a different sort of patron. So you want to think out of the box. You don't want to be too wedded to this book concept, even though the books are still and probably always going to be our bread and butter, but you don't have to be too wedded to book this, book that. There are a lot of different things that can be done to be creative. And when you think about the types of technology and technological services you offer, that's going to affect the patrons that you bring in, and that's very important. Okay. 1997, I do want to mention a few other things briefly. 1997 was when we actually started seeing the explosion of public access computers and public use of computers to access the internet within public libraries. And that coincides with the establishment of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant that helped libraries secure computers and computer technology for libraries. So before that happened, libraries were a little slow as far as coming to the table and embracing the internet and what it could offer and giving people access to the internet. And we don't want to be behind the curve anymore. We don't want Bill Gates is a very charitable and good guy, actually, but we don't want someone from the for-profit industry to really be the person who's the cause or the catalyst for us to expand our services and start thinking out of the box as far as what we offer our patrons. Okay, a few other things, and then I'll be able to let you go. Difficulties that public and academic libraries need to deal with tend to be bandwidth, monitoring bandwidth, and then also monitoring what can be actually used by patrons with the technologies that we serve. For one thing, with public libraries tend to use PCs. We don't tend to use Macs. However, we've got a generation coming up that they're using Apple products. I thought Apple was really popular when I was in elementary school, and then it went away, and then it just came back, and now it's a neat thing and it's a trendy thing yet again. And so one thing that we struggle with is that when you're dealing with PCs, keeping up with software and software changes for PCs tends to be more of a challenge than doing so with Macs. So that's one thing that you have to keep in mind. And then also, a lot of times we just don't have compatibilities to these Apple softwares and things that patrons want to do with Apple products. But having said that, it would probably be a good idea, if possible, again, to maybe even have just one or two public Mac stations that can do some things that PCs cannot do. And then also the second challenge that I mentioned, this whole deal with the bandwidth. Different things can affect your bandwidth, and bandwidth is, once the bandwidth is being too heavily used by patrons, that's going to slow everything down as far as operations with technology and internet and that sort of thing. So a competent manager is going to know the bandwidth limitations of their library facility, and then also a competent manager, when bandwidth is being exceeded consistently, a competent manager is going to look into that and look into expanding bandwidth capabilities at the facility, at the library. Okay. One other thing, well, I've got a few other things that I want to mention here. Okay, really quickly, as far as virus protection, always remember that especially when you're dealing with the public library, you don't know where these people have had their flash drives, what they've been looking at, and what they could potentially be, bringing to library use computers. So You're going to want to have virus protection. Some public libraries actually do not allow for staff computers to have public to have people using the public using their public flash drives on staff computers because it's one thing. It's sometimes it's easier to just sort of, for instance, make a freeze state on a public access computer, but then when you've got a staff computer, if a patron hands you a flash drive and says, here, I need you to pull up something for me and explain this to me, or help me find the materials that are listed in this reference page, that's probably not a good idea because, again, there could be staff sensitive information on that staff computer, and those viruses can probably do a lot more damage to the staff computers, and the staff computers don't always have the same sort of save states or froze states that you will have on the public access computers. So always make sure that you have some sort of adequate plan in place for virus protection and protecting your units. You do want to also make sure that units are turned off when possible. Units that overheat, units that are left on all the time, they will overheat. They will also overheat other computers if they're next to them at times, especially if you got like a drawer where you keep laptops and technology like that. If you leave those things on, they can actually, that overheating of one can be a chain effect, and it can not only ruin that particular computer, but it can ruin the other computers around it. It is often good practice to have a person who is your quote-unquote IT person, and that's one of the last little notes that I'm going to leave you with. Probably those of you who are working in libraries currently, or even if you're a teacher or something else of that nature, which I know a lot of you guys are teachers, you're probably already familiar with knowing that there's going to be somebody who's a designated person within the library who does, and this person may or may not have a library of science degree, but this person or even this team of people, they have exceptional technology skills. They can troubleshoot when something goes down with the database or with the OPAC or with your Surfsea software or anything of that nature. You're going to want to have a person employed who is a technology guru and who keeps up with the trends and knows software and can also point you in the direction of free softwares and that sort of thing, things that can be used for free, downloaded for free, or downloaded for discounts. People who tend to be techies, they tend to be very adamant about keeping up with current trends, and so that's useful for us because we are able to they are the ones that can advise you what to upgrade to, what to not upgrade to, what to buy, what not to buy, and how to effectively get the most mileage of the softwares that you have at your library currently. Okay, so that is collections, and that is technology. The last lecture that we'll have for this module will be the lecture for assessment. So please stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.